When you and I came across the concept called the Dream 100, I thought it was an amazing way of explaining how to figure out where your dream customers are and also how to prioritize your resources. So, today, Kev and I are going to share what this Dream 100 is. And we're also going to give a practical example of how Kevin and I used it for the B2B Playbook so you guys can get a really good understanding of it and start to apply it to your own business. Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today we're discussing how to drive more demand for your business using the Dream 100 technique. We are into season 6 of the show. We spent seasons 1 to 5 giving away our 5Bs framework for demand generation. In the first part of season 6, we went through all the questions Kevin and I normally get asked around demand generation, created basically, Kev, half a season of FAQs. And thank you so much for the response to that. That has been amazing. Kevin, before we go into this episode, for those who are newer to the podcast, could you please explain to them what our 5Bs framework for demand generation is and what we covered in the first 5 seasons of this podcast?
Listeners and viewers, the 5Bs framework for demand generation is exactly that. It's our framework for doing demand generation, and really all marketing for B2B businesses should follow this framework or something similar. So those 5Bs were be ready, be helpful, be seen, be better, and be the best. And that's exactly what we covered, one per season in the first 5 seasons of the show. In Be Ready, we talked about how to deeply understand your dream customers. Then in Be Helpful, we leveraged that understanding to develop relationships of trust with them online, particularly through building helpful content online. In Be Seen, we then work to amplify those relationships by amplifying the helpful content and to focus in on your dream customers, on your target ICPs, making sure that content gets in front of the people that needs to see it. In Be Better, we looked at how to optimize your whole B2B marketing process, everything that you've built up until that point. How do you get the most out of it? And finally, last season in Be the Best, we looked at some of the advanced strategies and tactics that the big guys at the big end of town use in their marketing and how you can adapt them to your own marketing, no matter what size business you're in.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. And as I said today, listeners, we're going to go back to Be Ready, which is the first B in our 5Bs framework, as Kevin just explained, which is all about doing the hard foundational work of deeply understanding everything about your dream customers. And it's only once that you really deeply understand your dream customers that you know how to influence them and their purchasing decisions. Kevin, the context to today's conversation is so often I am asked by marketers who reach out, by businesses we talk to, they say, "Hey, George, where should we be advertising to get more customers? Where can we get the best bang for our buck?" Now, normally my response is that depends on where it is they hang out online and offline. I think, Kevin, to a lot of people, they roll their eyes and they're like, "That's a really annoying answer. Can't you just tell me where it is that I should be advertising?" But the truth is, it really varies depending on the industry that you're in, the types of job titles that you're targeting, the demographic of the people that you're targeting. We all hang out in different places online and offline. So, Kev, when you and I came across the concept called the Dream 100, I thought it was an amazing way of explaining how to figure out where your dream customers are and also how to prioritize your resources. So today, Kev and I are going to share what this Dream 100 is. And we're also going to give a practical example of how Kevin and I used it for the B2B Playbook so you guys can get a really good understanding of it and start to apply it to your own business. A quick reminder to all those listening that this episode is available on YouTube, and we have little drawings that I've done to help illustrate these concepts even further. So make sure you check out the B2B Playbook on YouTube. Kevin, the Dream 100. What is the Dream 100? Can you please tell our listeners and viewers?
The Dream 100 is not the top 100 customers you'd love to win. It's actually a list of places that your dream customers hang out online and offline. That might be a particular blog, it might be a particular newsletter that they all subscribe to, or it might be even individuals that they follow on LinkedIn. So The Dream 100 doesn't necessarily have to be people, doesn't necessarily have to be websites. It could be anything out there where there's already a collection of your dream customers and there's a collection of their attention, more importantly, in some shape or form. And why this concept is so important is because we all have limited time, budget, and resources. Most of the companies that we see in our travels blow it on things like Google ads, Meta ads, LinkedIn ads with little to no return, mostly because they're very unfocused on their approach to these things, but also because they haven't done this initial step of pre-qualifying those channels and whether they actually are those spots where the dream customers already hang out. In other words, whether they're actually Dream 100 list items. So we need to actually figure out first where our dream customers are actually hanging out online so we can get the key information we want to get in front of them actually in front of them and get them to first prioritize the problem in the way that we solve it and lead them to the logical conclusion then that we're the perfect solution and company to help them solve that problem. This way, we guarantee that our message is being seen by the right people in the right places, and we're hitting that with the most efficiency possible by narrowing in on the Dream 100.
Kev, just to add a couple of things there. So the goal of the Dream 100 is to take your ideal buyers from I've never heard of this company to what is this company that I keep hearing about it to I think I've heard of that company to yes, I've definitely heard of it to now yes, I do business with that company. So the goal is really to make sure that we're getting in front of our dream customers, our ICP, as often as possible in the places that they hang out. We have messages that are going to convince them to buy from us. We have messages that are going to build relationships of trust with them. And as marketers, we have to figure out how to most efficiently get that message in front of people. Now, one reason I love the Dream 100 is look, if we are just trying to target one new customer and send one message to that one customer, then we're only influencing a customer one at a time. And look, that's okay. There's no issue with that. But what we ideally want to be doing when we're generating demand is we want to be influencing pools of potential customers or collections of customers. If we find one place of significance where our dream customers hang out, say it's a newsletter they all subscribe to, then by just partnering with the owner of that one newsletter, we can get in front of hundreds, maybe thousands of potential customers, and we have a much, much wider reach. Now, again, I don't want to discount the idea that we should be doing marketing just to one individual customer. Like that is a great account-based marketing play, but that's something that we typically look at further down the funnel. Look at targeting accounts further down the funnel who are already generating an interest or expressing an interest in your product or service. But in this situation, we're looking at those places where they're all collectively gathering.
Okay, listeners. So then what are some of the things that you would normally include in that Dream 100 list? As we said before, they're all places that your dream customers hang out online. So think things like social media, what platforms, whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, what social media platforms do your dream customers hang out on? That might vary a lot depending on the industry, as George said before, but also on the demographics of your target ICPs, the people that are actually in your buying committees. Where do they actually hang out? Their preferences will likely change for social media, as with everything else, depending on their title, depending on that demographic. You can also include things like newsletters that we mentioned just now. Which are the relevant ones that people in a particular ICP tend to subscribe to and actually trust? It's important to have that level of trust as well because we want to pass that trust on to the recommendations that particular newsletter makes, which will hopefully be your product or service. You can also have a look at influencers. So who do they follow? So people might be on LinkedIn who are actual top voices in your industry already. Potentially they're a good place to start collaborating on content with. Also have a look at what webinars, which ones are the webinars that your dream customers attend, who holds those, and what type of themes do they usually cover. And that extends to things like podcasts as well, which ones do they generally listen to on a regular basis and take advice from. That then extends into other things that are maybe a little bit more disjointed and dispersed, things like groups that they might belong to, whether that's Slack groups, Discord groups, LinkedIn groups, any other sort of online communities. We've had jokes before where you can probably influence a pretty good group of people if you're on the Bargain forums, but that's Hopefully, not the example that we're talking about here. We're probably talking about things like business groups, groups that match a particular ICP's job titles that tend to exist on LinkedIn and places like that. So make sure you dig in and find those groups that are a little bit more diversified, a little bit more dispersed out there, and harder to find than all the other channels that we talked about before, because they can be very powerful. And even things like Google Ads, it's still a very good channel for you to reach B2B leads, for you to reach potential customers who are, in fact, your dream customers. But you have to take it a step further and think, what are the keywords that your dream customers are searching on channels like Google Ads? You can't just go onto Google Ads and expect to perform from day one. You have to do that research to figure out what are the search patterns that differentiate your dream customers from everybody else searching on Google Ads.
And Kev, it's not just online that we're interested in when it comes to the Dream 100. It's where they gather generally, and that includes offline. And the offline world is still really, really important. So think about what events are they attending or conferences are your dream customers attending? Where do they go to discover new products? Where do they go to hear about new ideas, new products in their industry? Think about what meetups they attend as well. So the deeper you understand your dream customers, the more you speak to them, the more they're just going to tell you this information. You can use some tools like SparkToro, built by Rand Fishkin, who we've had on this podcast, and Rand's a great guy, and the tool is fantastic for giving you a head start as to what influences they might follow and some of that information. But honestly, the best way to figure all this stuff out is to speak to 5 or 10 of your best customers and ask them, like, where do you hang out offline? What conferences do you attend? What groups are you a part of online and offline? What social media platforms do you use? Which ones do you go to learn new information? When you're evaluating different products and services, like, where do you go to do that? And now you start to build a roadmap, an idea of where it is that your dream customers are hanging out. So, Kev, our recommendation on how to approach this in like a logical way is to write this down in a spreadsheet. I know that many of our listeners have moved on to Notion. You and I haven't done that yet, Kev. And so maybe we're starting to seem like dinosaurs already. But we like to use Google Sheets to just record a lot of this information. And in one column, have the name of the place that person is hanging out. So it might be a particular newsletter. In another column, you might want to have the size of that audience. And within that size, how many of those you estimate to be part of your ICP, your ideal customers as well. In another column, you want to have the details of the person who controls that community. So who actually owns that community? What's the person's name? What is their LinkedIn address? What is their email address? What's their phone number? So we know how to get in contact with them. And then in another column, any other details around that community that you think are necessary to keep track of. And it's called the Dream 100, but you don't have to write down 100 of these. That is absolutely overkill. I would say look to make a list of 10. And then the goal is to start prioritizing that list. So we're not going to try and work our way into 10 different communities all at once. Make an evaluation based on who you have existing connections with, based on who your best customers follow more of that you think you could realistically get in touch with. Prioritize your list based on that, based on something that is actionable. We'd much rather you go deep on a few of these Dream 100 locations than going very thin and very wide, or you'll make zero impact.
And like everything else we talked about, there's a system here, and we want you to get that system down by getting your reps in with a couple of trial runs. And then as you get more familiar with the process, I think filling out that Dream 100 list will get easier and easier as well. As you talk to more customers, as you talk to more people in the industry, that will naturally lead you to other Dream 100 places that you weren't aware of before. And certainly for us, that was the case. We discovered a lot of different places, a lot of different people that we didn't know from the outset, who are really influential in the B2B marketing space. And make sure to get the ball rolling, to get your reps in, and this will become easier and easier over time.
And we'll go into that in more detail, Kevin. We're going to share with you listeners and viewers how Kevin and I built our own Dream 100 list, and I suppose some of those mistakes we made as well. But first, before we do that, just generally, people are probably asking, what do we even do with this list once we made it? Well, once you have this list, it's about getting our content in front of those dream customers that are in those Dream 100 communities. And so how do we do that? We say you can either work your way in to that particular community or that channel or whatever it is, or you can buy your way in. Now, what's the difference? Working your way in is about building a relationship with that Dream 100 community in that or that channel with the owner of that community, delivering value and earning their trust. When you deliver value to that audience, over time, you're going to build that trust, and indirectly, they're going to become more aware of your product and service. Buying your way in is essentially paying money for that ICP's eyeballs. And that can be done with sponsorships, it can be done with paid collaborations, whatever it might be. But yeah, we prefer generally, Kevin, to work our way in organically. That's probably largely to do with us being a bootstrap company. But I think when you do that, you understand the audience so much deeper. You understand their wants, their needs, their desires, and how that relates to what you can offer them. And so then you can create really helpful content that matches those needs and then logically leads them to your product as well. Buying your way in, though, if you don't have those resources to go really deep in a community, that can be as simple as finding out that all your ICP follow a particular newsletter and offering a paid sponsorship for that newsletter. We're buying those people's attention. Same thing when we run LinkedIn ads, right? Like we're guaranteeing that that LinkedIn content is being seen and consumed by our dream customers' eyeballs versus doing it organically, which is where you and I started, Kevin, was really posting very helpful content and pulling people into our network, but there's no guarantee they were going to see it. So that's working your way in versus buying your way in. All right, Kev, let's look at some examples as to how we made our own Dream 100 list, and then we can show how we prioritized it and both worked our way in and bought our way into it.
When we looked at our Dream 100 list in the first place, we listed out a bunch of things, and I think a lot of it changed over time. But I think the first few things that we listed down were areas that we understood well. We knew that B2B marketers hang out online, generally on platforms like LinkedIn, maybe a little bit on Instagram and Facebook. In particular, we knew of a few podcasts that had communities attached to it that was on Facebook. So we knew that was still a channel at the time that could potentially be tapped into. And we really chose to prioritize LinkedIn in the end because of the context of LinkedIn. So the context there is professional development. Obviously, that's a direct fit with the B2B Playbook. Plus, there was the ability to add our ICP into our own network on LinkedIn. So that allowed us to keep building our network very quickly and consistently across the LinkedIn network over time. And then as we started to do that, naturally, the influences of that B2B marketing space became clear to us. So with interacting with sharing knowledge, we started to see similar kind of posts come up in our own feeds. So other knowledge sharers included Justin Rowe from Impactable, obviously very heavy on LinkedIn ads. There was Jess Cook on the content side. There was Pasha Urshad, Ryan Gibson, Rand Fishkin, plus also companies as well. So companies like Factors AI, they already have all these people and companies already had a following of our ICPs in their networks. And so it made sense for us to start adding those people to our Dream 100 list as well, because then we could look to collaborate with those businesses, with those people to tap into our respective networks to build our ICPs together.
Kev, then there's other places like Slack groups that we found out that they hang out in, and that includes Metadata's community for demand generation marketers. There's also the Generate Slack community for APAC SaaS marketers, which has been started here too. There's newsletters that we know people follow. One off the top of my head is Caitlin Bourgeois's Why We Buy. Sorry, Caitlin, if that's not how you pronounce your name. And our goal, Kevin, with all these people is because we were bootstrapped, like we didn't have the funds to just directly sponsor their content. We didn't want to just buy their audience's eyeballs, was we drew them in for a content collaboration. And what was the easiest way for us to do that? We already had a ton of podcast episodes under our belt. So we thought, let's just have them on as guests. We have them on as guests. We promote them to our audience. They're then going to cross promote the episode to their audience. And then we get that exposure. All of a sudden, a whole lot of new people associate that influencer with the B2B playbook. That helps us get more follows. It helps bring people to our website. And it builds a lot of trust between us and new people who are potentially in our ICP. And so one way that we did that Was we collaborated with Justin Rowe. We brought him into a particular campaign we were doing to see, can we build the perfect B2B marketing campaign? We actually brought in a few influencers into this one campaign, Kev. We had Ryan Gibson, who's a customer research expert. We had Jess Cook, who's a great landing page and copywriting expert. We had Pasha Urshad, who's really good at tracking and reporting. And we had Justin Rowe run LinkedIn ads. And we basically got them to help us create an end-to-end B2B marketing campaign, which was so much fun. It produced amazing results for us, positioned them as experts to our audience. And this thing just keeps delivering for us time and time again. Like, we still get people talking about this perfect campaign. And I've heard from quite a few people that this has been so helpful to them, but it's also helped build business for each of these people we collaborated with. So it was a huge win-win for all of us. Just recently, Kevin, beyond partnering with individuals and influencers, we looked to partner with companies too. And so one company that we've partnered with recently is Factors AI. We built a sales and marketing workbook with a VP of revenue. He's ex-Google. His name's Steve Armenti. Built an amazing workbook for sales and marketing to go through together to make sure that they're completely aligned and can drive revenue as one go-to-market function. We partnered with Factors AI to help us create this workbook, and now we're all promoting it to each other's audiences. And so Factors have a much bigger audience and following than we do. We have a bigger one than Steve's, and we're all cross-promoting to each other and making it a real win-win, using the relationship with each other to build other relationships of trust with new potential customers who are being introduced to us. So that's just one way that we've been leveraging our Dream 100 to work our way in with these different places and these different companies that we know our dream customers are following. One more thing I'll add, Kev, is the reason, as you mentioned, that we chose LinkedIn as the place that we could really promote our business was because, hey, that's where B2B marketers go to learn a whole lot of new things. And we found that out by speaking to them, by conducting customer interviews. We know that B2B marketers hang out on Instagram and maybe a bit of Facebook. And we know they're in Slack groups. But we knew that as a starting point, LinkedIn was the point where people were going for professional development to go and learn more. We knew that we could easily identify them and bring them into our network. LinkedIn has great filters for that. And so that's how we prioritize that as a channel.
Beyond just prioritizing LinkedIn as a channel, then how would you look to prioritize the different influencers and potential newsletters that you have in your Dream 100 list? But you can take that same logic a step further. You can look at who the followers already are in that particular influencer or Dream 100 place, and you can have a look at how much of an overlap there is between your ICP or your ideal dream customers versus their audience. And you can try and figure out, based on that, who would be best to collaborate with. Obviously, it makes sense to target someone who has the most overlap, but you also have to consider things like what George mentioned earlier, whether you're comparable sizes and you can make a win-win collaboration with them as well. Obviously, someone like HubSpot might have a harder time collaborating with someone like us because they're working at a much bigger scale. In a similar way, if you're looking the other way, someone just starting or a business just starting, we might have a difficult time really seeing the benefit from that effort to collaborate with a newer business. But in finding pockets of where there's great ICP overlap in our respective audiences, that's where we found the most success at this stage, is figuring out where's that overlap, where are they of comparable size, and where you can deliver a win-win for both sets of audiences as well as both businesses involved.
Very good, Kevin. Just one more note on when it comes to once we create that Dream 100 list, we said you can work your way in and you can buy your way in, and we gave examples of both. I would just say when it comes to buying your way in, whenever you think about spending money, don't just think about how can we give it to the big three platforms like Meta, LinkedIn ads, or Google. That might not be the best place to spend all your funds. You can normally, once you identify these Dream 100 communities, find the owners and look to sponsor the place where their audience is gathering. And as we said, if that's a newsletter, then there's no reason why you can't reach out to the owner of that Dream 100 community and find out if they take sponsorships for that newsletter. If you're really well aligned to that ICP and there's a great natural overlap and a great fit, then why wouldn't they consider that? Kev, you and I were against that for a really long time. And then we thought to ourselves, you know what? These are actually products that we use ourselves and we recommend to others. So why wouldn't we take a sponsorship? And that allows brands to get in front of our listeners and viewers' eyeballs. But it's a product that we would tell them about anyway. So it's a great, easy win-win situation. So just think about how can you reach out to companies that already have your ICP in there and offer to sponsor so you can buy their audience's eyeballs. It's something that's very possible. Don't just think about giving it to the main advertising platforms.
That's it, listeners. And as George said, it's a win-win situation that you're looking for. That same logic again applies. Just trying to find the best way to leverage your Dream 100 list to get in front of as many of your dream customers as possible, but importantly, still being helpful. So that's very important with any of these activities, to still stick to being helpful and getting the information to the right people as well. And that can extend to something as simple as doing a thought leadership ad. You can still spend on the big platforms, but maybe boost a piece of content that is actually helpful within your company as well. So plenty of things that you can do there other than just simply spending some budget on Google ads, Meta ads, or LinkedIn ads without some tight targeting.
Kev, this Dream 100 concept is a stage that we teach as part of our demand generation course. It fits into part one of the course where we get you to deeply understand everything that you need to know about your dream customers to create a roadmap. Before then, we go and build our demand generation engine. And a question that we get in the live Q&As component of the course, Kevin, is, look, if you're working your way in, it's all well and good for you and Kevin to do that. You own the B2B Playbook. You guys are the experts. But it's pretty hard for marketers to do that when maybe they're in a different organization where they're not the experts. Perhaps they're selling software to engineers. And so it's pretty tough for a marketer to go in and contribute content there. What do you do when you're in that position and maybe the face of the brand, the CEO, just doesn't have time to do this and work their way into the community? Can someone else do this? And my answer to that, Kevin, is yes, absolutely they can, but they should be a subject matter expert. Because if they're not a subject matter expert, then that community is going to be able to call bullshit pretty easily, aren't they? Like, we are, especially people like in that engineering CTO space, they can smell bullshit from a mile away. And so if you don't have that expertise and you're feigning to have it, your content is not going to have the right impact that you hope it will. And it's probably not going to build those right relationships. So your job as the marketer internally for a business like that is to try and make life as easy as possible for your subject matter expert or for your CEO to do this work. So think about, how can you enable them to do this? Can you bring people from those Dream 100 to your CEO on a podcast that your company creates, for example? Can you ask your CEO questions and record their answers to just take up as little time as possible, but still get their face and name and ideas out there? Can you post the CEO's content on their behalf? Can you do ghostwriting? Can you do all that kind of stuff? Do the heavy lifting is my advice. If you're doing this for a CEO or for a subject matter expert, make their life as easy as possible. And then that's how you can then work your way in. So you still have that material, you still have that content. And then remember, often there's a marketing manager on the other side that you're trying to deal with who's also in need of content. And so make them your best friend too. That you need content, they need content. You want to expose each other to each other's audiences. Work with them, make each other's lives easier. And that's the advice that we normally give, Kev.
Yeah, that's it, listeners. And you'd be surprised when you have a look at it how much your CEOs, your subject matter experts, probably are already doing a lot of this stuff in terms of creating that helpful content out there. It just might not be as readily accessible. Think about if your CEO or leaders in your business have done interviews before. Is that content living somewhere else? Potentially you could promote that same content again, or pull the original source and ask those who put that together if you can be provided with the raw files so that you can make your own cuts, and then you can repost that content and repurpose it. So don't be limited by the fact that currently your subject matter experts or your CEO or the face of that brand might not have time. Potentially there's already things that they've done in the past that you can repurpose straight away. And then once they see the value in that, they'll naturally want to invest more time and more resources into doing more of the same. All right, listeners, Key takeaways for this episode: the Dream 100 is the top places your dream customers hang out online and offline. It's not 100 of your dream customers. Second, leverage the Dream 100 to reach more potential customers at one time with one single effort. And finally, make sure you prioritize your resources to either work your way in or buy your way in into the Dream 100's audience.
Very good, Kevin. Thank you. Okay, listeners and viewers, as always, you can find links to everything that we discussed in the show notes. And Kevin and I are just so grateful that every week more and more marketers tune in every Monday to the B2B Playbook podcast or YouTube channel. If you could ask one thing, it would be to please pass the show into someone who you think would get value from it. It's a huge help to us, and we really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, drop us a comment, drop us a tag somebody you think it would really benefit. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, listeners. Can't wait to catch up with you all next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. Catch you all next week.